I promised in one of my first videos I would show you guys exactly how to turn $5,000 into $1.28 million in just 8 steps. Exactly what kind of assets will do that, the research and data behind it, so that it's a very objective perspective on this topic. Now, in that previous video, I gave a big picture view. It's actually pretty simple. The theory of it is simple. If you take $5,000 and you keep doubling it, well, what happens? 5,000 becomes $10,000 on the first double, 20,000 on the second, 40, 80, 160,000, 320,000, 640,000, and on the 8th step of doubling your money, it's become $1.28 million. And that's what it means when I say $5,000 turns into $1.28 million in just 8 steps. Now, that sounds simple, but then the question becomes, but what assets will realistically keep doubling like that? Now, because this is a financial topic in the sense that we're talking about assets here, I have to put a disclaimer out there. This is just my own personal opinion, just generic educational information. This is not specific financial or investment advice. I'm not licensed to give any professional advice, and I'm only sharing what I personally do and my own personal opinion. So do your own research and be advised that investments carry the risk of significant loss of capital. Okay, so putting that out of the way, the answer is there's actually a lot of assets that consistently double in price. Let's look at them. Real estate, what has that been doing for the last 100 years, right? If you look at house prices 20 years ago, weren't they like 10 times cheaper, 15 times cheaper, 20 times cheaper than what they are now, right? And if the answer is yes, well, what you just saw is real estate doing what? What's 20 times? So 2, 4, 8, 16, and then a bit. So 4 and a bit steps of doubling the money, right? That's what real estate has been doing. And then if you look at gold, it's been doubling in price for a very, very long time as well. Decades and decades and decades. Index funds, so S&P 500, NASDAQ, Dow Jones Index, these are all assets that consistently double in price, but they take decades. Now, the key, what billionaires are very good at, what decamillionaires and centimillionaires, what they're very good at is figuring out what assets double much faster than other assets, and they pounce on it once they find it. So that really is the key, and this is what I want to share with you guys today. Which assets will double fastest? And then from all those assets, right, what are the criteria when selecting what kind of assets I personally choose? This is not financial advice. Now, that being said, I'll put a preface on this by saying that there's nothing wrong, in my personal opinion, if I put a little bit of money everywhere, a bit in gold and silver, a bit in real estate, a bit in Bitcoin, a little bit in, the NASDAQ or S&P 500s. There's nothing wrong personally in doing that, as long as my money is going up or growing in value at least as much as real inflation or more than real inflation. Now, if you take what is real inflation, well, I'll tell you it's not what is reported officially. If you take the opinions of somebody like, say, Michael Saylor, who's commented on this topic, he'll say real inflation is about 20% per year. So my benchmark is it has to go up more than 20% per year. Now, that being said, I'm going to put some charts on the screen, okay? You don't need to know any of this like charting techniques and blah, blah, blah. I'm only showing the graphics so you can see it better. Here are the charts for Bitcoin versus real estate, okay? Now, that chart, if it goes up, then Bitcoin's winning. If it goes down, real estate's winning, okay? And you can see the overall 10-year trend is Bitcoin's been going up. If you look at Bitcoin versus gold, which one goes up? Bitcoin. If you look at Bitcoin versus S&P 500 or NASDAQ, both of them, Bitcoin wins. If you look at Bitcoin versus crude oil futures, Bitcoin has been winning for the last 10 years. So in every single asset class, bar none, Bitcoin has always come out on top. It's a 10-year growth trend for Bitcoin. So that is the reason why I personally choose to put a lot of my wealth in Bitcoin and crypto mining. So I mine Bitcoins as well, okay? And it's because of that, because the data suggests that that will outperform pretty much every other asset. Now, I am pretty famous in Indonesia for having predicted a lot of things with a very high degree of accuracy. I'm going to post some of those screenshots on the screen. We predicted not the exact top of Bitcoin at $69,000 in 2021, but we did say it's bull run over at 45,000-ish. So that was near the top. And we said back in January 2022 that the next time to buy would be around end of 2022. So December, November 2022. And what did we do? In October, late October, we said crypto bargain season is on. Sale ends December 2022. And in Christmas time during 2022, we said, I hope you bought a lot of Bitcoin. And then from there, what has Bitcoin done? It's gone from $15,000, it's gone to $45,000 back in April. And then we said, take profits, put it into crypto mining. So mine Bitcoins with that money while the market goes sideways. And what did it do? It went sideways. And then in October, October, we said we're starting to buy not just Bitcoin, but a whole bunch of cryptos, right? That's since October. And what has the market done? It's gone up. So we have a very, very strong track record of predicting Bitcoin and cryptos movements with a very high degree of accuracy. It's never 100%. Nobody's 100% accurate, but we personally have an accuracy, I would estimate around about 90% accurate. That's not an exact figure. I haven't actually done the math, but I'm pretty damn accurate. So how do we know this data? Well, we use statistics and probabilities, okay? So that's what I want to share with you here. And then after I share with you how we know what Bitcoin prices will do, then I'm going to start talking about, well, what are the criteria for choosing, should I put a lot of money in Bitcoin or not? Okay, so, and by the way, I want to say, I'm not pushing you to do anything to do with crypto or Bitcoin. This is not a Bitcoin channel, it's not a crypto channel. I'm only sharing with you what I personally do, okay, and the logic behind it, okay? So let's get into it anyway. What I have on the screen is Bitcoin's price since 2010 when it first started trading publicly to pretty much right now. Yesterday it was at 42-ish thousand US dollars per Bitcoin, okay? And you can see if you plot this as what we call a logarithmic chart, which is what I've done. I'm not going to get into the details of what I do to set up this chart, by the way, but if you plot the chart correctly, you will see that there is a very clear pattern where the price of Bitcoin goes up, down, sideways, up, down, sideways, up, down, sideways, up, down, and that's why we predicted in April sideways for a while, and now it's starting that up again, okay? Now, from a big picture perspective, I think we can agree that Bitcoin kind of has this cycle of going up really fast, down really fast, and then sideways between that high and low. And it does that over and over and over again. So from a very big picture point of view, I can clearly see that there's something here to be learned, you know, something to pick from this chart that could be useful for making a lot of good decisions when it comes to Bitcoin, okay? And so I'm going to add extra words now, all right? So you can see on the chart, I've just put on the screen L1, H1, L2, H2, L3, H3, and so forth. And then you have the BH, BH, BH stuff. So what do they mean? So L is the lowest price or the low, H is the high, L is the next local low, H is the next high, and so forth. Now, BH, we'll get to that in a second. But consider this. You can see from the very first point, so the lowest low, that's over in 4th of October 2010, that was at 1 cent per Bitcoin. The first high was around about $32, $31.90. That was in June 2011. So between October 2010 and June 2011, which is not even a year, you would have turned $1,000 into something like $32 million. And of course, that's been on the media everywhere. Everybody knows that, okay? So what I'm saying is, take a look at these L's and H's, and let's start looking at patterns. Now, what kind of patterns can we see? There are really only two types of patterns. Time-related patterns, so that's the left to right movements, and price-related patterns, that's the up and down movements, okay? So if we look at the time-related patterns first, let's measure the time it takes to go from one H to the next H. Now, the first one is an exception. The first one only took, I think it was something like 1.5 years or something, June 2011 to December 2013. So around about 2.5 years, okay? So the first one was an exception. And then after that, every single H to H, now that's kind of broken, so I'll change that a bit. Every single H to H, so H2 to H3, H3 to H4, and H4 to H5, right? If you do the measurements, now I'm giving a really quick version of this. I would normally plot every single date accurately, but you know, you can do your own research and verify this. But basically, every single H to H after the first one took roughly 4 years. Let's measure them, right? That's end of 2013, end of 2017, so around about November, December-ish, end of 2021, and I am publicly predicting, I've done this in my Indonesian businesses and channels, and I'm doing it right now in the Freedom Family channel, that the next one will probably be around about end of 2025, okay? And I'm doing that just based on pure statistics. The next set of time patterns is H to L. That's the next one. And every H to L, except for the first one. The first one was an exception. It only took from end of 2013 to... no, that's not the first one. This is the first one. H1 to L2, right? So that went from June 2011 to November 2011. So that took only 5 months. But every time after that is taken roughly 1 year. We can verify this. So get rid of the ad. December 2013 to January 2015. That's roughly 1 year and a bit. December 2018. That's 1 year. November 2021. November 2022. That's 1 year. So we can say that from the absolute top to the next low is roughly about 1 year-ish. Okay, so that's how we were able to predict all the way back in January, right, that most likely next time to buy would be end of 2022. Okay, so you're kind of seeing the picture now, yes? And so that's from a time perspective. That's why we were extremely accurate with timing when we were buying and timing the sideways movement. Now, I haven't talked about the sideways movement, have I? So how did we do that? Well, there's this thing in Bitcoin called Bitcoin halving, and that's a phenomena where the results or the yield you get from Bitcoin mining, which is one of the things we do, basically halves instantly. Right now, it's at 6.25 Bitcoins per roughly 10 minutes or per block. And in around about April 2024, that will halve to about 3.125 Bitcoin. So all of our machines will suddenly, boom, drop half their results overnight. Okay, and that has a very important effect on the price of Bitcoin, because all of a sudden supply is cut in half. Supply is cut in half, demand is ever expanding because there's more dollars being printed everywhere, right? And so Bitcoin has only one choice: it goes up. And that's why in every single scenario, bar none, without exception, every time there's been a Bitcoin halving, it is always followed by a massive rise that breaks the last all-time high. Okay, that's been the case there, it's been the case here, it's been the case here, and April's the next one. That's where we think it will break the next all-time high. It'll take place somewhere in 2024 towards the end and heading into 2025. Okay, so that's the data we have that shows us the phases of Bitcoin, okay? And most markets have cycles. Real estate also has a cycle. If you look at the real estate cycle, it takes roughly 7 to 10 years in a market like Australia, okay? So in the Australian market, it'll go really, really strong up for a year or two, and then sideways for 7 to 10 years, and then up again really strong and so forth. So it has that cycle to it. Bitcoin, without exception, also has a cycle to it, and we've just shown that. Now, that being said, now that we understand these cycles, the next part is understanding the price projections of Bitcoin. And there's two schools of thought for this. They're contradicting to each other, so we don't know which one exactly is going to be the accurate one. The first one is using an indicator called a logarithmic growth curve. And I've already done the setting up for you, so you don't have to figure that out. But you can see on the screen here that this little red band marks roughly where the top of Bitcoin is at the end of every cycle. The only exception so far that has not touched the exact top of this red band, I'm going to sort of magnify this a bit. See how it's touched the top there? It's touched the top of the red there? It's touched the top of the red there. The only exception was 2021. And that's the only reason why we didn't pick out the exact top of Bitcoin on Twitter, right? If you look at the tweet, I was like, either this is a time where Bitcoin goes to 150,000 or bull market's over, right? Because it was getting to December, it hadn't broken the all-time high. Sorry, it hadn't reached the target, pardon me. And we're like, this is too late. This is taking too long, right? But that's why we didn't time the exact top. Okay, because this time it didn't touch the exact top. But if we use this school of thought, this indicator as a rule, as a guide to what the next high will be. All right, well, let's just take this all the way to the end of 2025, roughly here, right? The bottom part of the red part is roughly 475,000 US dollars per Bitcoin. So call it $500,000. The top end of that red zone is 860,000 US dollars plus minus. Okay, so if it goes anywhere in the red zone, you're looking at a range of around $500,000 to almost $1 million per Bitcoin, right? Now, that looks like a big range, $500,000 difference, but if you think about it, that's only one step of doubling your money, right? Again, we're talking about doubling your money in several steps, right? Now, that's if it touches the red zone. Now, let's assume that over time it does not touch that red zone at all. It starts to sort of go more and more flat, right? Then, okay, well, what's reasonable? And this is a personal opinion. This is not based on any sort of data, but I would say anywhere between this red and the middle line between blue and red, right? That kind of marks a fair, reasonable area for me, right? And so that would give you a range of the low end, 275,000, to a top end, the bottom of the red zone, at around about $500,000. So you're talking about $250,000 to $500,000, right? So that's one school of thought, is using indicators and sort of, plotting the future with these little red lines and blue lines. Whether that pans out or not, we have yet to see. There is another school of thought, and that is to calculate how many times has Bitcoin increased? What's the multiplier between each low and high? And if you plot those points out, the first one was at 1 cent to $32. That's 3,200x. Okay. Second one was from $2 roughly to I think it was $1,200 near the top. let's just confirm that. Yep, 1,140. So call it 1,200. So that's a 600 increase, roughly. Okay, so 3,200 on the first one, 600x on the second one. Third one was $165 to around about $20,000. And I'm doing this really quick because I've been doing this for a very, very long time. 125 to 20,000. That's an increase of 100 and if I'm not mistaken, 165 or 125x. I don't remember exactly, but you can calculate that yourself. And then the fourth one, which just happened in 2021, that was from $3,150 roughly to $69,000 roughly. So that's a roughly 22, 23x on your money. Now, if you use those statistics, then you can see that Bitcoin every single cycle, the multiplier goes down by a factor of about 5 or 6. So 3,200 to 600 is roughly 5 times less. 600 to 125, that's what's that? 5 times less, I think, if I've done my math right. And then 125 to 23 is 5 times or 6 times less. So you're talking about like Bitcoin's up movement going down by a factor of 5 every single time. And if you do that, then the next one should be around about, what's that, 23 divided by 6, 4 times from the low. So that's $15,500 times 4. That brings you to 60 something, $62,000. So that's not even breaking the all-time high. So if we take that school of thought, this next cycle in 2025 won't even break all-time high, okay? Which one's correct? We don't know. But what I do know is there are no assets out there that will go from $15,500 in 2022, end of 2022, so realistically it's 2023, right, to even the lowest of the lowest end, that's 60,000 something, right? So a 4x on your money in 2 years. I don't think real estate does that. I don't think the index funds, so NASDAQ, S&P 500, I don't think any of them do that. I don't think gold will do that. I don't think silver will do that. I don't think any asset on the planet will do that other than other very highly speculative cryptos. Okay, that's why I am pretty damn sure that Bitcoin is a very, very valid option for getting yourself to double your wealth 8 times or more in only in a relatively really short space of time. We're not talking decades, we're talking years. Okay, so I hope that's clear. All right, now to end this topic, because we've been talking for a while now, good job on your patience. I want to share with you what are my criteria for picking any type of asset in the first place, because there is the argument that, yeah, Bitcoin goes up slowly. There's all these other cryptos that will go 100x, 200x, 1000x, whatever, right? Well, yeah, if we're talking about investing for the long term, we're talking about what are the criteria of wealthy people when they invest. Here are my personal criteria, okay? The first one is it has to be an investment that I can buy and not think about it for a long time. I'm talking about until I want to, you know, give it to my kids or, you know, pay for my kids' home, education, whatever it is, right? So it's got to be something that lasts decades and decades and decades. And, you know, if you're looking at all these other cryptos out there, and not just cryptos, but all these like even individual shares, like your top 500 companies, the average lifetime is only 15 years, right? It rules out a lot of individual company shares. It rules out a lot of highly speculative type stuff. And your options kind of get whittled down to the likes of Bitcoin, gold, silver, index funds, not individual stocks, real estate, and crude oil. Again, not financial advice, just what I've personally researched and my own opinions. So just on the first criteria alone, you've kind of whittled it down to there. Then you look at the next set of criteria. It's got to be an asset that at least goes up equal to or more than real inflation. And for me, that benchmark is 20% based on my own research. You can do your own research and decide for yourself. But if 20% per year average is the benchmark, then there's only 2 assets that have really done that, NASDAQ and Bitcoin, right? Of the list from before, right? So that rules out a lot of these other types of assets. And then you go, okay, so it's also got to be an asset that's easy to bring with you anywhere in the world if you need. So this is to cover the event of any war, any conflicts. 2022 was a very tragic year. Lots of countries went to war with each other. 2023, we saw a lot more countries going to war and a lot of conflict. And in that situation, we're talking about really peaceful countries before anything happened. Suddenly, overnight, your bank account gets frozen, credit cards get frozen, you can't access the stock market, it's closed down, the currency of that country has collapsed. This really happened in several countries, right, that went to war. If that happens, you need to bring your money really quickly. You can't bring real estate with you. You have to sell it, right? And that's not going to happen during a war. You have to stock market closes down during any kinds of conflict, so that's not an option. You could bring gold and silver with you if you're confident you can pass the x-rays at the airport or the shipping port. And then the only other one that really makes sense is Bitcoin and cryptos, right? So that is another checklist for Bitcoin. And so all of these factors both from a price perspective, the charts and patterns that I've shown you, and from the criteria of what makes a valid asset for a long-term investment, points to Bitcoin being a very, very strong candidate. Now, that being said, I do not advise you to anything or invest in anything or make any money decisions based off of this video. This is only me sharing what I personally do, the research I've personally done that has been the foundation of the decisions I've made with my own personal money. You do your own thing with your own money and accept the risk for your own decisions. Okay, so hopefully this helps with your own perspective on things, on money and related topics. We'll see you guys in the next video, and don't forget to subscribe and share and comment on this video. Just help us out with spreading the word. Okay, so see you guys next time, and here's to your success.